Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. It's the Monday episode. We are 1 week into Steelers training camp. Myself, Christopher Carter, and one of my partners here, Ray Fittipaldo, are going to talk to you about what our top observations were through week one. We'll go over the excitement of week two starting on Tuesday when the pads go on and the physicality gets real. We'll also give you our top players throughout training camp, all here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive Podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive Podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter. He's Ray Fittipaldo. We're your Steelers beat writers. And as always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive Podcast, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, including our daily updates from Steelers training camp from our guys, Ray, Brian, and Jerry, as we are there all summer long at Saint Vincent College. As always, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Edgar Snyder Associates, you may know them to help you out when you're in a pinch with an injury concern. But did you know they also help you with workers' compensation? Call them today at 1-800-94-EDGAR. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. We'll talk more about them later. Ray, we're a week in, man. We've been sweating our butts off. I'm getting sunburned out here. I'm putting all this sunscreen on, and it's not working, and it's driving me nuts. But we are enjoying our time at Saint Vincent College. Some of us are. But I thought it was a pretty interesting week because the Steelers have had a lot of changes, and you've covered a lot of training camps, Ray. I'm not sure if there's been a recent training camp where there's been this many new veteran faces on the field at the same time.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think you see that manifested in the way that Aaron Rodgers and his receivers are, I don't want to say struggling, but they're trying to get on the same page. And listen, when there's a mistake, you see Aaron go over and talk to people. Hey, do this the next time or do that. I was watching pre-practice today, and they were working on a scramble drill, and Jaylen Warren didn't do the drill the way Aaron wanted it. They made a correction, and they did it 2 or 3 more times, and eventually they got it to Aaron's liking. So I think you're going to continue to see that. Listen, we're only 10 days away or so from the first preseason game. Actually, 12 days away from the first preseason game. So, game action is coming up pretty quickly here. You got another week up at St. Vincent, a few practices the week after, and then they'll be off to Jacksonville for that first game. So it's the new faces are going to have to get on the same page eventually, and that's what these practices are for.
We'll talk about our top players of training camp later. We'll save it for that. But I do think it's been interesting to take note of how the Steelers have been handling this training camp. I wrote this for my skinny post, but, we've seen both sides of the ball be a lot more aggressive in their schematics with different things they're doing this year. Defense especially, you're seeing so many flips of coverages, whereas they did that, here and there with Minkah Fitzpatrick last year. Mike Tomlin said when we first got here on arrival day that, hey, we believe in these cornerbacks. We're excited to have them. They're going to open up new doors. I'm seeing all sorts of blitzes and packages that I'm not used to seeing the last few years with Terrell Austin, Ray. And I got to admit, I'm a bit impressed because I think that's playing a big role into why they're causing so much problem for Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf in this offense.
Yeah, I think you had the video yesterday of Jonnu Smith, and Jonnu Smith basically said, I don't know that we're going to face this type of a defense, once the season starts. So, yeah, in that way, the offense, I would say, has struggled more than they probably would want. But again, I think the defense has a lot to do with that. Listen, when all the guys are out there healthy, T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cam Heyward, you add in Derrick Harmon, who I know a lot of people in that building already feel like he's going to be a guy on that line. The inside linebackers, Patrick Queen and Payton Wilson, are coming off good seasons. Payton Wilson especially, I think they're looking for more out of him this year. And then when you add in the new guys in the secondary, the expectation is that it's going to be much better and that they're going to be a different unit than they were last year when Minka Fitzpatrick was back there. So, yeah, high expectations for the defense. And you're right, there's a lot new there that Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin are experimenting with.
It just seems like they're experimenting with a lot because these guys are moving everywhere, the skies and coverages, and doing it effectively. Like, of course, there's going to be communication breakdowns. We saw a touchdown where the Steelers offense lined up in a trips right formation, and it took the corners and safeties a couple seconds to figure out what their assignment was. It was an open touchdown, but then that was like the first play of 7 shots, and then they won 7 shots because they were so good at it, and several of them were smothering them. I think there's a chance that we might see, as we've seen a top 10 defense every year that Terrell Austin's been defensive coordinator for the Steelers, but this might be their best chance to get a top 5, maybe even a top 3 defense in the NFL since they were a top 5 defense in 2020 and 2019, particularly because of these cornerbacks they've added. The defensive front they've already had, and because they have other young guys to be excited about, like you brought up Derrick Harmon, but I'm also kind of impressed with Payton Wilson right now and how he's looked out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's interesting that you bring up 2019 and 2020. I think 2019 was the best defense they've had in the last 6 years. And it's interesting. They did that when Minka Fitzpatrick was added after the first week of the season. So, we're talking about, fitting in new guys. And I think it just goes to show you when you add talented players and players who know what they're doing and coaches knowing how to incorporate them, it can be successful no matter how much time you spend together at OTAs or minicamp. I forget who was talking about it yesterday, Chris. You might be able to enlighten me, but I think it was DK Metcalf. If not DK, somebody was talking about Jalen Ramsey and how impressed it was Joey Porter. How impressed he was that Jalen Ramsey walks in, and we're talking, he said this after the third practice, how impressed he was that Jalen Ramsey could pick up slot, outside corner, and free safety, not only pick it up, but perform well at each position. So, when the Steelers talked about acquiring Ramsey's versatility when that trade was made, something tells me that Mike Tomlin knew what he was getting. So Jalen Ramsey, great athlete, right? I mean, playmaker. But when you're a player like that and you have it upstairs and you can sort things out and, say, okay, I'm going to play slot this snap, I'm going to play free safety the next snap, it's a tremendous advantage for your defense. And that's part of the reason why I think Mike Tomlin is so confident in this group this year. This is the most confident I've seen Mike Tomlin about his secondary maybe ever, and it might be close to being the closest I've seen him to being confident about his entire defense as well. He is enthused about this unit.
And it seems like they're giving him every reason to. You talked about having it up here for Jalen Ramsey. Watching him play, there's been several plays where he's been really impressive. He's intercepted Aaron Rodgers. He's broken up several passes. He's got in the way of things. He's been blitzing off the cornerback position. But there was one play that I thought was really impressive that it was him and DK Metcalf lining up on the outside, and he lets DK Metcalf get inside leverage just enough, and he trails him. And so Aaron Rodgers sees, I've got my guy, my number one wide receiver. He starts to throw it, but it was all part of the plan because it was a zone, and Deshaun Elliott was creeping on the other side of that route and was like, I'm going to jump it. And Aaron Rodgers had to, as mid-throw, you can see him kind of go like, and he throws it away to avoid the interception. But it's those kind of things that, like, Jalen Ramsey isn't just a guy who you're just like, go sick him and he just covers people. He'll do that, but he'll also work in concert with the people around him. Yeah. And it seems like that's something that Terrell Austin has been really excited for, but also Jared Alexander, the secondary coach. We talked to Deshaun Elliott a couple days ago, and he was like, he is really changing everything. And Deshaun Elliott even said, before I worked with Jared Alexander, I wasn't able to make plays out of the post as confidently, talking about like the deep cover 2 role that he can sometimes have, he as confidently as he is in this training camp. So I think we're seeing a more aggressive, a more detailed secondary, and that's something that you and I were talking about all offseason, all the complaints of miscommunication. And miscommunication happens to everybody. It's going to happen to this unit, but it seems like there is a more strict tone to try to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, for all the change, I mean, after 4 days, I would say it's going well, because when you think about it, you know, Alexander's taken over for Grady Brown. There's a change in the secondary coach, and there's 3 new starters. You got Darius Slay, you got Juan Thornhill, and you got Jalen Ramsey. And I know Thornhill comes off the field when, you know, when they go to base, but you know, you're basically having 3 new players back there have to gel together with the holdovers, and I think it's gone, you know, pretty well. You know, you mentioned 7 shots today. They actually gave up a second touchdown in the flat where they, you know, they couldn't sort it out real quick. But yeah, overall, I've been impressed with his secondary, and I think a lot of that has to do with Alexander and what he demands of those players.
The pads go on tomorrow, Tuesday, at Saint Vincent College. We will see our first fully padded practice. We're going to talk about the things we're most excited to see and matchups that we're excited to see for that practice next here on the North Shore Drive podcast on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Don't go anywhere. We got a lot to discuss. But first, I want to remind you, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Do you know they also do workers' compensation? When you've been hurt on the job, you need to know who decides when you're better, who decides when your treatment's over, and who decides when your benefits are over. The answer might surprise you. It's always the insurance company's doctors. If that makes you feel like you're a little bit alone there, don't worry. Edgar Snyder has got your back. You got to call Edgar Snyder's today if you need help with your workers' compensation claim at 1-800-94-EDGAR, because they'll fight for the workers' compensation rights that you deserve. Again, that's 1-800-94-EDGAR. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Ray, I was, you know, with the first day of pads, everyone always gets excited for backs on backers, and the linemen finally can play for real and stop just, oh, I'm kind of blocking you, oh, I'm kind of pass rushing you. So I was thinking, when someone asked Mike Tomlin on Sunday after the last non-padded practice, like, oh, hey, who are you excited to see match up? I was thinking like Derrick Harmon and Zach Frazier. I was thinking like, you know, Malik Harrison and Caleb Johnson, like big dudes, running backs, linebackers, linemen. And I want you to tell people who he said, because I found this rather funny.
Yeah, well, listen, he said Kenneth Gainwell, the new free agent running back who played for the Eagles last season, going up against Payton Wilson, the second-year inside linebacker, in routes, not in contact, like what everybody wants to see in pads, contact. No, he went after a more finesse drill, I guess, which is fine. I can attest. I've been going to these camps for I don't know how long now, Chris. Mike Tomlin loves that drill as much as anyone. That drill where you pit little fast guys against more, you know, athletic linebackers. He loves that. You know, they sort of get from the numbers to the sidelines, that short area space, and, you know, they see who can cover who. And it's a great drill, but I don't know about you. I'm still going to be watching backs on backers.
Exactly. I got to see some hitting, man. That's what we came here to see. Like, listen, maybe the second or third padded practice, then I'll be looking over there at the routes and the guys running what they do and the coverages. I just thought that was so funny. I was just, when he said, I literally was like, what? That's the matchup? Okay. Yeah. All right, that's fine. But I think there's a lot of excitement for a lot of reasons. You know, Derrick Harmon has been a guy who, you know, was picked in the first round for a reason, has been expected a lot out of, and like without pads, he's also kind of made some noise for himself. You know, he's been, you know, getting in the backfield, he's been swatting down passes. Y.A. Black's been swatting down passes. You wrote about that for your observations from Sunday. I'm excited to see this defensive line go up against the offensive line, and it's also because Ray, and it happens every year when the heat gets up, you get to that fourth practice and the offense is tired of the defense is tired of the offense, there's some pushing, there's some shoving, there's some fighting. And we saw some of that Sunday. I think it was Ryan McCollum and Cole Holcomb went at it. I saw an exchange where Pat Freiermuth blocked Jalen Ramsey, and afterwards Pat was like, hey, like all good. And Jalen like shoved him, and Pat was like, whoa, come on, man. It wasn't like that. But it's getting like that because these guys, when you're out here, you're hitting each other, and now the pads are on. There's some natural, I don't like you and you don't like me, and let's settle this once and for all.
We're going to have 4 pretty intense practices, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. My prediction, Jalen Ramsey is going to get into a fight in at least one of those. There's going to be more. Linemen are going to be involved there. The one unfortunate thing, Chris, and we didn't mention this in the first segment, we're not going to get to see Broderick Jones, I don't think, a whole heck of a lot this week. Soft tissue injury. He had his upper leg wrapped. So, Mike Tomlin didn't go into detail about that, but it seems like it's either a quad or a hamstring. So I wouldn't expect to see Broderick out there on Tuesday. And listen, I'm like everyone. Like, I wanted to see him go up against TJ. I wanted to see him go up against Alex. And you mentioned some of the other matchups we'll get to see. Derrick Harmon is going to be a good one. And all those offensive linemen have something to prove, right? Like Troy Fautanu is coming off an injury. Mason McCormick was a rookie last year. Like I'll be front and center whenever that happens as well. Hopefully, the 1 year, Chris, it might have been last year, they did backs on backers and live one-on-one pass pro at the same time, and you had to pick and choose which one you wanted to go to. So, even though we're not going to get to see Broderick, I don't think, on Tuesday, there's plenty of other matchups that we could focus on with the O-line and the D-line.
Give me a matchup that you're really excited to see, whether it's offensive line, defensive line, or backs on backers.
Yeah, I'll go O-line, D-line, and I just referenced them. Fautanu was coming off the knee injury. Was super impressive this time last year. Basically, a year ago next week is when he earned that starting job as a rookie, and it happened pretty quick after like 6 or 8 practices. And I want to see if he's back to where he was. We talked to him in mini camp. He said he was or OTAs. He said he was taking it slow, but by the time camp got here, he was going to ramp it up. Well, Tuesday's the day to ramp it up. So we're going to get to see Troy against Alex Highsmith. We're going to get to see Troy against T.J. Watt, right? Those guys are going to be flipping sides. That's what this camp is all about for those outside linebackers. So, yeah, I want to see Fautanu go up against all those edge. It's a great edge rusher group. He's going to get reps against Herbig and Jack Sawyer too. So it's going to be interesting to see how Fautanu comes out of this next week.
It is. Troy Fautanu, and he even said he's excited. He said it's been a year since he's played real football, and he's just like he's raring to go. And I get that. There's a lot of guys like that. I'll give another one. I'm excited to see Caleb Johnson against everybody because Jaylen Warren is really good at backs on backers. I think he's one of the best pass protecting running backs in the NFL, just technique wise. Even though he's 5'8", he will blow you up if you come in and you're not correct about your pass rush. Caleb Johnson has to get to that level. And I think what's going to happen is Jaylen Warren's going to set a tone at the start of backs on backers, and then Mike Tomlin's going to come over and he will say, 2-0. Get in there. And then he'll just throw everyone. He'll throw Malik Harrison. He'll throw Patrick Queen. He'll throw Payton Wilson. He'll throw edge rushers at him. He'll throw everybody at Caleb Johnson because I think they want to see how tough can this guy be. And to be fair to Caleb, he also has talked about this, and our colleague Jerry Dulac is going to write about this for Tuesday. But he talked about this is the thing that I know I have to get down because this is the thing I didn't do a whole lot in Iowa. I have to improve at this. So I'm really eager to see Caleb Johnson in that. But then also, of course, when they go full 11 on 11 and see him actually get to run and not through, thud practice, actual physical practice.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to see that Caleb Johnson is going to be a factor when it comes to the run game. You could just see the way he hits the hole and the way he can accelerate through a hole. He's going to be that guy, and he very well might at some point overtake Jaylen Warren as the main toter of the ball in this offense. But to your point, to be an every down back, which I'm sure is his goal eventually, you got to be able to pass protect, and we'll see if he can do that this week. and you got to be able to catch the football. And from what I've seen so far, I would say he's a little bit below the line in terms of his hands. He had a drop, I think, today, right at the flat. The ball hit him right in the hands, and he dropped it. So if he's going to want to see the field as much as some other, highly touted backs in the past, I'm thinking of Le'Veon Bell, like even Najee Harris, like even when they got Jaylen Warren, who was, hands down the better third down back, you could still put Najee Harris out there and he could catch a football for you. I mean, Najee Harris caught that touchdown against the Ravens that won them that game a few years back. So he wasn't deficient at it. At this point in training camp, I don't want to say that Caleb is deficient at it, but he's just not very good at it at this point.
I'm right with you. So lots to see there. We're going to go over our top players of week 1 of training camp. That's next here on the North Shore Drive podcast and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. But first, I want to remind you, this show is also brought to you by UFC Gym Pittsburgh. If you're looking for a way to challenge your body and sharpen your mind, step into something more than just a workout, welcome to the brand new Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy at UFC Gym. Here, it's not just about training, it's about living the values of honor, discipline, and respect. Whether you're a total beginner or leveling up your skills, you'll be guided through a structured program led by a third-degree black belt instructor who builds confidence, strength, flexibility, and real technique. Head down to the UFC Gym at the Waterfront or Market Square to learn about the exclusive 3-month introductory package today, only at UFC Gym Pittsburgh. We're also brought to you by Boss. Boss Menswear has reached icon status for its tailoring, but offers more than just the perfect suit. They have collections that also feature casual and athleisure pieces, presenting a complete wardrobe for the fast-paced modern lifestyle. Tailoring and sportswear are brought together in a look that is ready for whatever the day may hold. Check out Boss, now open in the Ross Park Mall with a selection of new menswear pieces. That's Boss, open now in Ross Park Mall. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo, wrapping up the show after a week of Steelers training camp. And the first week is always, it's the acclimation period, right? It's not the full, it's not the full deal, not just the full pads, but like this next week, they're about to practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They're about to do several days in a row. Not all of those will be in pads. Most of them, I think, will be. The Steelers are they make it important to play in pads. They want to be that physical team, so that's going to be interesting. But Ray, even with the acclimation period, it's important to note who gets the details down right, who's looks like they're playing really well. Give people the top player that you've been seeing out there right now in training camp, the person who's been impressing you the most.
I got a feeling we might have the same guy, so I might make you think on your feet a little bit, but I'm going Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah. I think I'm right. I'll pick someone else for mine, but explain to people all the things you're seeing with Jalen right now.
Yeah, much of what I talked about the last segment, just the ability to go smoothly between positions, go from playing nickel outside and then drop back to safety when you bring in the base. I mean, it's such a value to have a player who can do that, both physically and mentally, and not to mention that he's still a playmaker. I mean, he might be 30 years old now, but that guy had an interception of Aaron Rodgers. I think it was on Friday or Saturday. I forget the day. So he's still out there making plays, but what has impressed me most is just his ability to move around there and just overall making the entire Steelers secondary better.
I agree. I always knew Jalen Ramsey was a good player, great player even, and very detailed in his work. But just watching the details play out in front of me in an up close fashion where I can see more of the things. Like, you and me, we talk a lot of ball, right? We look for these details. We're waiting to see, okay, what's this? What's that? What went into this? And when you're watching it on TV or in the press box, it's a little different. But when you're seeing it every day in practice for a whole week, and now we're about to see it for a few more weeks, it gives you a little bit better of a sense of how much work goes into being a true professional. And that is who I think Jalen Ramsey is. You're right on the money about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fun to watch him when the games really matter. I don't know how much he's going to play in Jacksonville or any of those other preseason games. I got a feeling that guys like him and TJ are Cam, are probably going to be held back, and you're going to maybe see them for a series or two combined in all 3 games. So this might be something where you have to look forward to the season and just kind of bank on, okay, week 1 against the Jets, we're going to see him put on a show. I got a feeling it's going to be that kind of season.
I agree. I have a feeling like that too. I'm going to go same unit, same position. I'm going to say a guy who hasn't been talked about enough is Joey Porter Jr. Yeah. I think he's had a really good camp. And granted, Jalen Ramsey has been the better cornerback, and he's Jalen Ramsey. He's a 3-time All-Pro. Like, he's a superstar. He's who Joey Porter wants to get like.
Right.
But I have seen, and we've heard a lot about how Joey Porter needs to be more detailed, needs to avoid the penalties, needs to do this. And I'm seeing him do a lot of these things. And granted, maybe part of that's because he's not always covering DK Metcalf every single time, but he is covering DK Metcalf. And we've seen him blanket DK Metcalf and blanket several of the Steelers receivers and tight ends. He's been really detailed in his work. He's been solid. Now, again, got to see what happens when the pads go on. Got to be able to tackle people. Got to be able to come up and help in the run game. But I think part of what could really make it really exciting for this cornerback group and this defense as a whole is the fact that you won't just have Jalen Ramsey kind of moving around and trying to be aggressive and line up in different spots and keep you guessing. He's going to be among cornerbacks that you don't want to challenge too often. Like Joey Porter Jr., now that he's not the CB1 that's like the most feared cornerback on the team, now he can be the guy that's like, hey, you might want to avoid that guy over there, but if you come my way, I'm going to be ready too. And maybe he's not guarding the number 1 receiver on your team. Maybe he's guarding the number 2 receiver, or maybe he is guarding the number 1 receiver. But I think he has looked good. I think he's been solid, and I think that he is every bit as in tune with what they're trying to do as both Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey are. And Mike Tomlin talked at the top of this camp about how confident they were in their starting corners and how often he wanted to see those guys out there. This first week, I get it just watching them.
Yeah, listen, if you're a corner, and this goes for receivers too, you're going to have your wins and you're going to have some losses. As much as they compete every day in one-on-ones and then in team periods. But the one play from this first week that I remember from Joey, Chris, and you probably remember this too. He had DK Metcalf press him along the sidelines. DK stretched out, laid out, almost made a great catch. But Joey, he was going to be out of bounds anyway. But Joey broke it up anyways, out of bounds. Great technique, close to him, was able to make a play on the ball. And that's what you're looking for. And that's against probably what I think everyone would consider like what a top 10 or top 15 receiver in the league in DK Metcalf. At least the Steelers are paying him that way. So, yeah, I've been impressed with Joey as well. And that's the step they were looking for him to take. Let's see if he can continue with this week in pads.
I will say I get tempted to say Derrick Harmon in this, but as Mike Tomlin says, his job is done in pads. And so I can't, as good as he's looked at as far as getting off the ball and getting in the backfield and showing, I want to see him be physical when the pads go on. And if he is, oh boy, this defense could be a big problem from the line to the secondary, and that could be something really fun to watch all season long. But we still got plenty of training camp practices before the season and before that first preseason game. The pads go on tomorrow. If you want to follow all of our coverage, be sure to follow all of us on social media, but also subscribe to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where we're going to be churning out all this work, all this coverage from all 4 of our guys, myself, Ray, Jerry, and Brian. We're covering everything here at Steelers training camp at Saint Vincent College. We'll catch you again here Wednesday on the North Shore Drive podcast. Remember to subscribe to this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all those Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes back here Wednesday, recapping the first day of pads right here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.